Today, I went back to work. And the funny thing is, as I'm planning this episode right now, I'm literally sitting in the back room at that job watching training videos. Well, watching might be a generous term. I've worked here for approximately 10 years of my life. So most of this is basically just a refresher of information I already know. And thankfully, they let me put most of the videos on 2 times speed. So I'm sitting here going through all the required onboarding stuff. And I'm also working on this podcast episode so that when I get home this afternoon, I can sit down, hit record, and talk to you about the fact that, yeah, I went back to work today. And there's something incredibly full circle about that because a little over a year ago, I left this exact job. Around that same time, I started this podcast and stepped back into running Pretty Pineapple Bead full time. And when I left, I told myself I wasn't coming back. And actually, if we're being completely honest, I think I've told myself that more than once over the years. And yet, here I am. But the surprising part is that I don't think being here means what I once thought it would. Because there was a time when going back to work would have meant one thing to me. I failed. Today, I'm trying to let it mean something completely different. I did what I needed to do. Hey friend, welcome back to Sparkle and Shine. I'm your host, Cassandra, and this is the podcast where we talk about building a small business, chasing your dreams, and learning the real lessons along the way. Each week, I'll be sharing what I'm learning in my own business, the wins, the struggles, and the lessons that come along with it. So if you're building something of your own too, you're definitely in the right place. All right, let's get into today's episode. This wasn't a sudden decision. So first, I should probably explain how I ended up back here. This wasn't a decision I made overnight. Going back to work has actually been floating around in my mind for probably the last month or two. A few months ago, my husband changed positions at his job, and that change came with a pretty significant pay cut. I'm not going to get into all the details of our household finances because obviously some things can stay private. But we've definitely felt that change over the course of the summer. At the same time, if you listened to last week's episode, you already know that my summer market season hasn't financially gone the way I hoped it would. I started this summer with a huge $10,000 market goal. I had almost 50 markets on my calendar. I did the math. I believed I could do it. And I was really hopeful that Pretty Pineapple Bead was going to bring in enough money that I could contribute more financially while also working towards some of my own goals. That hasn't quite happened. There have been good market days. There have been beautiful moments. There have been new customers and repeat customers, and so many experiences that have made this summer incredibly meaningful. But financially, the numbers just aren't where I hoped they'd be. And eventually, our household reached a point where we realized we were going to be about a week late paying our rent. And that was the moment for me. I remember realizing we were short and thinking, okay, it's time. And that same day, I told my former boss, expect my application today. And then, because apparently this is my life, I sat at my very slow Monday market and filled out an application to go back to my part-time job, which is almost comical when you think about it. Sitting inside my Pretty Pineapple Bead booth, surrounded by the business I've spent years building, applying for a job because the business wasn't currently bringing in enough money. That moment could have felt devastating, and parts of it did. The part that felt like failure. Because I have to admit something. My pride did not love this decision. When I left this job last year, I told myself I wasn't ever coming back. And I think there was part of me that attached meaning to that. Leaving meant I had succeeded. Going back would mean I had failed. Except life isn't actually that black and white. My business didn't disappear today when I clocked in. Pretty Pineapple Bead still exists. My markets are still on the calendar. My jewelry is still mine. This podcast didn't suddenly vanish. You're literally listening to it right now. And I think I've had to challenge this idea that entrepreneurship only counts if it's currently paying every single one of your bills. Because that's a really heavy expectation to put on something that you're still growing. Would I love Pretty Pineapple Bead and Sparkle and Shine to completely support me financially? Hell yes. That's still the dream. Going back to work didn't change that. It just means that right now, in this particular season, I need another source of income while I continue building. And I don't think that's failure. I think that's being responsible. Although knowing that intellectually and actually believing it emotionally are two completely different things. I'm still working on that second part. I wanted some of my independence back. Finances weren't actually the only reason I made this decision. This part feels a little vulnerable to talk about because I want to be really clear about something. My husband has always made sure we have what we need. I have access to our household money. I have a card. There isn't anybody controlling what I can or cannot buy. This isn't about that. This is about me. Over the last 14 months, as I have become more financially dependent on my husband, I started noticing something happening inside me. I didn't want to spend his money on my wants. Even though it's our household, even though we're married, even though he'd probably tell me to just buy the damn thing anyways, there were times when I started feeling like I couldn't afford to leave the house. And that's kind of crazy because technically I could. But emotionally, it didn't feel that way. If I wanted to grab lunch somewhere, buy myself a little treat, put money away towards something I wanted, there was this mental calculation happening. Do I really need this? Should I spend the money? And I realized I missed having income that felt like mine. Money I earned that week that I could choose to do whatever I want to do with it. Maybe some of it helps with bills. Maybe some goes into savings. Maybe some eventually goes towards that $10,000 car fund I talked about last week. And maybe sometimes I buy myself something completely unnecessary just because I want it. There's something about that independence that I realized I really missed. And getting some of that back is really important to me. This isn't just my problem to fix. I also want to make something else clear. I'm not going back to work because fixing our household finances is somehow solely my responsibility. My husband and I are a team. He's been looking at additional and different employment opportunities too. We're both looking at our situation and asking, okay, what can we change? And for me, this is just one of those changes. For him, there may be different ones. And honestly, I think there's something comforting knowing that we're both working towards the same thing. We're not pointing fingers at each other. We're adjusting because sometimes life changes. Income changes, plans change, and you have to change with them. But I'm scared. Now there's another part of this that I don't want to gloss over. I'm scared. Not necessarily of the job. I know this job. I know my boss. I know several of the people who work here. I worked here for approximately 10 years before I left. There's actually something comforting about walking into a workplace where I don't have to learn everything from scratch. Hence why I'm currently sitting here watching training videos at 2 times speed going, yep, I know this. Yep, I remember. Yep, got it. But what I'm scared of is what happened last time. I'm scared of burnout because I feel like I just got myself back. And if you've been listening to the podcast lately, you've heard me talking about this transformation I've been going through. I've been happier. I've been more present. I've been embracing color. I've been journaling. I've been doing my affirmation and mantra cards every morning. I've been spending a lot of time outside. I've been reconnecting with myself. I've finally reached this place where my nervous system doesn't constantly feel like it's screaming at me. And I really cherish that. I don't want to lose her again. I don't want to become that exhausted shell of myself who doesn't have anything left to give her business, her relationships, or herself. And I'd be lying if there wasn't a little voice inside me asking, what if this happens again? What if I get tired? What if Pretty Pineapple Bead slowly gets pushed onto the back burner? What if I stop creating? What if I stop showing up here? Those fears are real. But the difference is, I am aware of them this time. This time has to be different. When I went back to work before, the job wasn't necessarily taking up a huge amount of my time. Actually, when I eventually left last year, I was only working a couple of days a week. But I learned that something doesn't have to take up to 40 hours of your week to take up way too much space in your head. And I think that's more of what happened to me. I was burned out. Work was taking up mental and emotional energy even when I wasn't physically there. And eventually, I just didn't have much left to give to anything else. Pretty Pineapple Bead got pushed onto the back burner. But honestly, so did a lot of my life. So I'm not walking into this chapter pretending that simply working part-time is automatically going to protect me from burnout, because I've already learned that lesson. The difference this time has to come from how I approach the job, and more importantly, how much of myself I allow it to take with me when I clock out. I'm not taking on management responsibilities. I'm not looking to climb the ladder. I'm not trying to prove how much I can handle or become the person who automatically takes responsibility for everything that needs to get done. That's not why I'm there. I'm there to work my shifts, earn a paycheck, create some consistency for myself and my household, and then go home. And when I go home, I need to actually let myself leave work at work. Pretty Pineapple Bead is still my priority. I'm still in the middle of my market season. I still have a minimum of 2 events every week through the beginning of October. I'm still creating content. I'm still recording this podcast. I'm still building the business that I ultimately want to support me. And I'm still prioritizing the version of myself that I've worked really hard to reconnect with over the last year. And I think that's probably the biggest difference this time. I'm much more aware of what burnout actually looks like for me. And I know some of the warning signs now. I know what happens when I stop pouring anything back into myself. And I know that protecting myself isn't just about how many hours I work. It's about boundaries. It's about mental space. It's about remembering that my job is one part of my life. It doesn't get to become my entire life. Now, am I going to balance all of this perfectly right away? Absolutely not. Today is literally day 1. I'm in a transitional period, and I'm going to have to experiment with what this new routine actually looks like. There will probably be things that I think are going to work that absolutely don't. There will probably be routines I have to change. There will probably be moments where I realize I'm taking on too much and I need to pull myself back. And that's okay. The goal isn't to create some perfectly balanced life where I never feel stressed or tired again. The goal is to notice when something isn't working and actually listen to myself this time. Protecting the person behind the dream. More than anything, I think the biggest difference this time needs to be how I take care of myself. I've talked a lot recently about my little rituals. Every morning, I pull an affirmation card and a mantra card. Usually, I take them outside, photograph them, and share them on my Instagram stories. And then I carry those messages with me throughout the day. Now, I'm going to have some mornings when I start work at 6 a.m. Minnesota is not exactly known for having bright, beautiful sunshine at 5 in the morning all year round. So at some point, I'll have to adapt. Maybe I'll take the photo inside. Maybe I prepare part of it the day before. The important thing isn't the perfect Instagram photo. It's maintaining the ritual that has been helping me. It's the same thing with journaling, with meditation, sitting outside, listening to music, having those quiet moments where nobody needs anything from me. Those things cannot become the first things that I sacrifice when my schedule gets busy. Because I've learned what happens when I continually remove myself from my own priority list. And I don't want to go there again. Maybe the job can actually help the business. There's another possibility I've been thinking about. Maybe having a part-time job doesn't take something away from my business. Maybe in some ways it gives something back. Because financial pressure does something weird to creativity. When you desperately need your business to make money right now, every product starts carrying way too much weight. Every market becomes, please let today be a good sales day. Every email becomes, please let somebody buy something. Every post becomes, is this going to convert? And that is exhausting. I've felt that pressure this summer. So maybe having consistent income coming in every week gives Pretty Pineapple Bead a little breathing room. Obviously, it still needs to make money. This is a business. I'm not pretending revenue suddenly doesn't matter, but maybe I can create without every single thing needing to rescue my bank account. Maybe I can experiment again. Maybe I can make decisions because they're good for the long-term business instead of because I desperately need cash today. And maybe this job can help support the dream while the dream continues learning how to support me. And actually, I really like looking at it that way. I don't stop being an entrepreneur when I clock in. There's something else kind of funny about recording this episode today. I literally worked on planning it while sitting at my other job. And no, I don't want this to become some weird hustle culture message where I'm telling you to monetize every spare second of your existence. Please don't do that. I've learned enough about burnout already. Today, multitasking happened to work. But it also reminded me of something. I didn't stop being a business owner when I clocked in this morning. I didn't stop being a podcaster. I didn't stop being creative. I didn't stop having dreams. I just also became an employee for a few hours. Both things can exist. And I think maybe I've spent too much time believing that there was only one acceptable version of entrepreneurship. Quit the job, build the business, never look back, make enough money, live happily ever after. But real life isn't an Instagram carousel. Sometimes you quit. Sometimes you go back. Sometimes you work a job while building, and sometimes you leave again. Sometimes the business supports you, and sometimes you support the business. Sometimes you have to adjust the plan without abandoning the destination. What does going back actually mean? I've been thinking about one sentence a lot while preparing this episode. Going back to work used to mean I failed. And when I asked myself what I want it to mean this time, the answer that came out was I did what I needed to survive. But sitting with it now, I think I want to add something to that. I did what I needed to survive so I could keep building. Because I'm not surrendering anything today. I'm not closing Pretty Pineapple Bead. I'm not ending Sparkle and Shine. I'm not packing my dreams into a box and putting them in the basement. I'm giving myself and my household some breathing room. That's different. Going back to something familiar doesn't automatically mean you're going backwards. Sometimes you return with completely different boundaries, different priorities, different self-awareness, different goals. And maybe, most importantly, you're different. The Cassandra walking into this job today is not the Cassandra who left it 14 months ago. I've learned a lot about myself since then. I've learned what burnout feels like. I've learned what joy feels like. I've learned what it feels like to reconnect with myself. And I've learned that protecting that version of me matters more than proving anything to anybody. for the person who feels like their plan changed. So maybe you're listening to this and you're facing your own version of going back. Maybe you need to pick up a part-time job. Maybe you need to change your business model. Maybe you need to take fewer clients. Maybe you need to move home. Maybe you need help. Maybe the thing you confidently said you would never do again suddenly looks like the most responsible option available. This doesn't automatically mean you failed. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't stubbornly sticking to the original plan. Sometimes it's being willing to say, this isn't working the way I need it to right now. What can I change? There's a difference between changing the plan and giving up on the dream. I'm changing the plan. The dream is still very much alive. And honestly, I don't know how this chapter turns out yet. This is day 1. I don't know exactly what my routine will look like a month from now. I don't know how I'll feel balancing work, markets, Pretty Pineapple Bead, this podcast, my marriage, my home, and still making sure there's room for in all of that for me. But I know what I'm going to try to do. I'm going to pay attention. I'm going to protect my boundaries. I'm going to keep doing the little things that have helped me feel like myself again. I'm going to keep showing up for Pretty Pineapple Bead. I'm going to keep showing up here. And I'm going to let this paycheck do what I need it to do. Take a little pressure off. Give me back a little independence. Help my household. Help me save towards my goals. And give my dream some room to keep growing. Maybe there will come a day when I'm sitting behind this microphone telling you that I left this job again. Maybe there won't. I don't know. And for once, I don't think I need to know. I'm trying really hard to live in the season I'm actually in instead of constantly trying to skip ahead to the next one. And today, I'm a business owner. I'm a podcaster. I'm a wife. I'm an employee again. I'm still Cassandra. And I'm still building the life I want. I just took a slightly different route than I thought I would. So if your path looks a little different today than the one you pictured for yourself a year ago, I hope you'll give yourself some grace. Changing the plan doesn't erase the progress you've already made. And doing what you need to do today doesn't mean you've given up on where you're trying to go. Sometimes going back to work doesn't mean you're going backwards. It just means you're taking care of the life you're building while you continue building it. So thank you so much for spending part of your day with me, and I hope you'll join me again next week. Until next time, keep showing up with heart, believe in yourself, and keep shining.